Welcome to another episode of the Tim Boxeo Show. Just like we do every week, here's a disclaimer. This is not your average boxing podcast. If you're looking for a breakdown on just who stared the hardest at each other between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, this is not the podcast for you. We are going to go into the cracks and the crevices of boxing, and that means we are going to discuss all things club boxing. The good, the bad, the ugly, the dangerous, and everything in between. We're going to learn about the way boxing works when the lights aren't that bright. Okay? So if this is something that you're up for, cool. Strap in, get ready to go. If not, that's fine. There are plenty of podcasts out there that are perfect for what you want to listen to. This isn't the one. So if you want to go check those ones out, go check them out. Message Tim, by the way. He'll give you some recommendations. But anyway, if you're up for this world, I mean, we have quite a show for you today. So let me introduce the man who's going to be doing most of the talking today, and that is the TC Boxing Hall of Famer. He is a guy that not only watches club boxing, but watches YouTube boxing as well. This is going to be an interesting one today. Tim Boxeo, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
I am doing great. Did you enjoy your weekend of boxing?
Yeah, I feel like I say this every time we start, but it was another pretty busy weekend. Of course, around the world, we have a massive weekend upcoming. More so on the big stage, -1 with Triller, but that's okay. We weren't going to talk about that anyway.
I mean, nobody was going to watch it either.
Very few. And I did watch the long stare down today, but we're not going to talk about that either, between Wilder and Fury. But lots of other super cool stuff. I'm also really excited to have Tijuana Commissioner Alejandra Ayala join us a little bit later, so it'll be awesome.
Someone we've talked about quite a bit. And if you're wondering Alejandra Ayala, that is the commissioner of Tijuana Boxing and somebody whose name we frequently bring up when we talk about Big Punch. And, the thing about the stare down, if I could say one thing about that, is that if that was Saul Farah in one of their positions, that would not have been a 45-minute stare down. It would have been 45 seconds, and then somebody would have had something thrown at their head. And I'm just saying, we may need that in the world of boxing.
It would have been a lot more entertaining, I'll tell you that.
I think next week we actually will be talking about our friend Saul, won't we?
We will.
Oh, man.
Yep.
As if we could give you anything more to wait for with Alejandra coming up. Next week you have Saul Farah. Anyway, assuming the fight happens. Anyway, my name's Angelo. I'll do most of the asking of the questions here. So let's get started. Tim, what was the big takeaway? What was the big story from this past weekend?
So I hesitated to visit about this with you as our big story for the weekend until we messaged each other just coincidentally, and realized that we both watched this event. So it's like a strange, bizarro world that this happened. But Saturday, there was the YouTube versus TikTok pay-per-view event. Now, for those unaware, this happened Saturday night on pay-per-view. Let me just pause real quick right at the beginning of the story and tell you, before you shut the podcast off from here, okay? We're not going to review each of the fights and break all this down or anything like we do with club fights. But there's an interesting story, I think, about this event because, I took the night off on Saturday night because my son wanted to watch this event. We paid a total after taxes and everything else of $58 for this thing. And he's really heavily into gaming, YouTube, TikTok, things of that nature, and wanted to watch it. And we spent about 4.5 hours together from 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern time till after 11. And I just wanted to take a different approach to this and reviewing the card really just on its overall entertainment level as an event and how LiveX Live, which is the name of the distributor or promoter that put the event on, how they were able to deliver really a solid night of entertainment that included some pretty good fights in the ring. And yes, that actually happened. I was as surprised as you might be listening to it. Let me just share a little bit of background, then I got a question for you Angelo. But for some background for people that have no idea what we were talking about, or just saw it on a cursory, superficial level, and just decided that just pissed them off and ignored it, is that the event was held in Miami. It was a 7-fight card. It was supposed to be 8, but 1 fight dropped off. And overall, 5 entertainment acts. There was a really decent broadcast team. Charlemagne the God, rapper, I guess entertainer overall now, was the host on high, so to speak. If you think about those really expensive pay-per-views and they have the 2 or 3 hosts like way up high overlooking the whole event, he was that guy. And then Jonathan Coachman, who's been in and out of boxing for years now, was kind of the primary play-by-play, blow-by-blow person. Someone named FuzzyTube was on the mic too, on the broadcast team. 10 million YouTube followers. Someone named Keemstar, who runs a YouTube page apparently called Drama Alert, 6 million followers, was also on there. Marcos Villegas, who is the founder of Fight Hub TV, I'm sure everyone listening to the podcast is pretty familiar with. And then Paige Van Zandt, who I think everyone knows, was also on the mic. Entertainment-wise, we had DJ Khaled, Fat Joe. That made me feel a little more up to speed on what was going on that night after seeing those two. But then Little Baby, someone named Migos, Trippie Redd, whoever that is, and some other rapper were on. The overall fighting was 5 2-minute rounds of boxing. They had a standing 8 count, 3 knockdown rules in effect, no headgear. The first 2 fighters, for some reason, on the free portion of the event, had wrestling headgear on. So that was really weird.
That was really weird.
Yeah. And it took them forever to figure out how to get the wrestling headgear on, so it was delayed. But then the 5 main fights in the pay-per-view had no headgear, which really added overall to the show in my mind in terms of the boxing. So the main event was someone named Austin McBroom, who I had never heard of. He founded this thing on YouTube called Ace Family. It has 20 million subscribers on YouTube. It's a pretty massive number on that platform. And then Bryce Hall, never heard of that guy either, who claimed to be in over 40 street fights, a TikToker, had 18 million on the night of the fight. I jotted a note down. I was watching it. And I just checked on him here before we went on air, and he's got 20 now. So apparently something went right that night. And then McBroom also mentioned that he earned $5 million for the fight, as well as a portion of the pay-per-view dollars. One interesting side note before I ask a question of you, Angelo, is Michael Lee was the biggest social media star in the event. He unfortunately got knocked out brutally in the fight, and I've got the link in the show notes to a tweet that was sent out showing the knockout, and it was as good as a club KO that you would see in boxing. It was really pretty good. Michael has almost 50 million TikTok followers, 11th most on that platform, which is just off the charts amazing. Now you can see and understand why advertisers and promoters wanted to figure out how to leverage these influencers. But my question, I guess, after giving the rundown on how it went, and then I'll give you my opinion on maybe 2 or 3 things that were really good about the show is, Angelo, you're like the Iron Man of boxing podcasts. I've lost count on how many boxing podcasts you're churning out every week, but you have a very successful, what I guess I would call a mainstream boxing podcast called Boxing by Sunday Puncher, and I was listening to it here this Monday, and I almost fell out of my car seat when I heard you briefly mention this event, which I don't think I'm too off in left field by saying is not on brand for your podcast. So I'm interested to know why you decided to mention it on your podcast. What made you, after watching it, what made you bring it up?
I don't think I would have brought it up on the podcast, but one thing happened that made it a lock that I was going to mention it. And that was the fact that the main event on Saturday with Shakur Stevenson just completely did not deliver. In any sense of the word, it did not deliver. And I was left no choice but to say I got more enjoyment watching this card between guys that clearly had never been in the ring before, Although two of them had actually been in the ring before that I can recall. And it was over. And also you have to factor in that, like, in the mainstream sense of boxing, we're seeing this transition into these events where it's, there's boxing, the competitive sport that we all know and love. And then there's boxing as entertainment. And there's an intersection for sure. And the intersection is where you get mega stars like Floyd Mayweather. But they also can exist in two separate ends of the spectrum. And this one was on the other end of like entertainment. But we're seeing this convergence right now in boxing where people are trying to put these events on that blend the two and I don't know, try something different, which is fine. And it's relevant right now to what's going on, because this is like, okay, well, this is like pure entertainment, pure like just not really competitive in terms of like, is there any significance to the actual sport? And so it made sense to mention where, like, or to just kind of look at the direction that things are going in. And just, I actually enjoyed it, and I didn't think I was going to. I've seen those YouTube fights before, the YouTuber fights before, and they're not good. But for whatever reason, some dudes got battered on Saturday, and I was here for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've watched all the YouTube entertainment Triller. We don't need to run them all down. Everyone knows what we're talking about. And I've rarely been entertained. I've been entertained in just little snippets here and there. But what I thought most interesting about this show that I wanted to visit about is there were so many things went well, so many things about it that went well. And first and foremost, it was what I would share with my friends after I'd watch one of these other events, not this one, where I'd be disappointed, is first and foremost, the boxing has to be good. Mm-hmm. You can't just have concerts and throw crappy boxing in. Now, on the surface, that's what I thought I was going to see. Like, I had no expectation that any of these guys were going to know how to fight. And, looking at them versus high-end stuff that you see on the major networks, they couldn't fight. But they would fit in perfectly on club boxing shows all around the United States, if not around the country. Turns out, I learned for watching the show that they found out that this show was going to go down like back in January. So a number of the guys were training for 4 to 5 months with Joel Diaz. You mentioned on your show, Regis Prograis was out in the ring in the main event. Mm-hmm. So there were boxers and boxing trainers that were working with these kids in the gym. And some of them really put their nose to the grindstone because you could tell that they really had a basic understanding of what they were supposed to do. This was not a celebrity boxing show like was also went down this weekend on pay-per-view. That was just some of the worst boxing, if you want to call it boxing, that I think I've ever seen. This was not that. And overall, I think that's the main point for me, is that if you put this type of boxing in a ring with entertainment, it could definitely work, because there were entertaining fights. There was one huge knockout. It was just really good drama, and I couldn't believe it. It was an overall very entertaining night.
The main event, actually, the guy who claimed to have had 40 street fights came in, and he got outboxed and wound up getting absolutely destroyed in the ring, and that was completely unexpected. And it was promoted well. There was real animosity between the two guys. I mean, I don't know if you saw. I mean, the production value of the clips before the fights was very good, and like it set the whole thing up. So like what it was that these guys, or why they were fighting. And this guy was out here telling the other guy, I wouldn't. You have a family. I'm not losing to somebody who's got a family, because all these kids are like 22.
Yeah.
It was really good. It was entertaining. The music wasn't overbearing. I think that's one of the things that I've had an issue with these entertainment shows, is like, enough with the music. Like, make it work, but don't cross what we're doing here, because I don't think at all you really should be doing concerts and fights. I think those are two separate demographics that you're going after. People that want to see a fight don't want to see music. But I think also there is some truth to maybe like people that show up to celebrity boxing maybe want to see a concert as well.
Yeah, I think I think again, the boxing was the center stage. There might have been one time when one of the entertainers did two songs, but for the most part, they all did a song. So the pace of the show moved along really well. It wasn't like the Triller event that we just watched where there was literally like a band up doing 4 or 5 songs in a row. And it's like, all right, I'm here for the boxing. And anyone that tunes into this stuff is going to be here for those celebrities putting on gloves. I mean, and a smaller portion in my mind are going to be here for the concerts. And I think that was really good. The announcing team also was solid. I mean, Jonathan Coachman's been in and out of boxing. He does a nice job. No one on the broadcast was like overly cheesy. I mean, it was, they were calling it as they saw it, and just doing overall a good job. Paige Van Zandt was fantastic in not being perfect in what she was saying. I think you mentioned that to me, Angelo, but just slipping in very simple and easy to understand things to be looking for in a boxing match. Like the fighter should be keeping his feet under him, or what it means to be standing in the pocket and what you should be doing in the pocket, letting their hands go or moving, one of the two, not standing still. And I mean, she was really sharp, and I was very impressed with that. Just overall, I guess I'll close with this before we move on to the next topic. My takeaway is, people that just outright dismiss this, that's fine. Like, I totally get it. This isn't something I would choose even over a run-of-the-mill club boxing pay-per-view if my son hadn't asked me to watch it. But then looking back on it, I thought to myself, do we really have, boxing needs as big a tent as possible. Let's not be confused and get it twisted about what our sport, how bad our sport is and how screwed up the promotion and marketing is of our sport. So, I think we just need to give all this, at least in my mind, a good swing at the plate and see how things turn out.
Yeah, I think these events do turn. The next Tim Boxeo is probably watching this card, and they'll look back in 10 years and be ashamed that this is what it was that turned them into a fan. But I think that's how it works. You said your son wanted to watch it. My nephew, who's 11, wanted to watch this. I think not every person who watched this fight, especially these young people who watch these fights, is going to become some hardcore fan. But there's some out there, and I agree. Boxing needs to. Boxing at the end of the day has been, and probably always will be, a spectacle sport. It's unrealistic to see it as like a grinded out sport like Major League Baseball is. I don't think that that's ever going to happen. So
agreed.
Let's move on to the fight of the week.
Yes, we have 3 really solid fights, and I'm happy to say we previewed all this. So we finally got something right on the Tim Boxeo show on previewing, because I think I was in a losing streak there for a minute. But nonetheless, Saturday, ESPN Knockout had a show from Los Mochis, Sinaloa, Mexico that we previewed because I was super excited about Kareem Arce versus David Cuellar in the main event. Cuellar 18-0, where Arce, nephew of Travieso Arce, Jorge, it was 18-0-2. Now, that fight did turn out to be pretty good. Cuellar actually won. I was a little surprised, but won TKO 9, knocking out Arce. Somewhat questionable stoppage, but overall, he was winning the fight, landed some huge shots, and the ref jumped in and called a halt to things. He was going to win on the scorecards, and he took the win. And that was what I was really thinking about the fight of the weekend. But what I wanted to spend my time, because there was a fight that was not listed on BoxRec, and I looked tonight before we got on the phone, and it's still not listed on there. So I have these fighters' box recs individually listed for you in the show notes. But this was a legitimate fight of the year candidate, not just on the club level, but worldwide. Oscar Neri and Luis Araujo, neither guy had ever heard of, were set up for 8 rounds as super flyweights. And this was one of those fights that both guys just stood in the ring and laid their foreheads against each other and just started throwing punches. And it went off like that within the first 30 seconds, and it just rolled that way for 8 full rounds, and it was brutal. The first 3 rounds were really fought at an unbelievable pace. I mean, what you would expect from flyweights, but the power of their shots was what really got me hanging around, because sometimes I get a little bored with the lower weights if I don't think either one of the guys has any chance of knocking each other out. And
Never
I tell you,
heard
Neri
that one
was
before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there for the knockout as the end of my fight, first and foremost, right? Hopefully, most other people are too. I mean, it's such a unique thing about our sport. But Neri was hurt and wobbled within like the first 30 seconds of the fight. I'm like, all right, this is going to be good. And then from there on forward, Neri hurt Araujo to start the 4th with a left hook that backed him up in the corner. So both guys had been wobbled to this point through about 3.5, 4 rounds. There are really no jabs in this fight, no overhand rights, just the double hooks to the body, uppercuts, double hooks to the head. And it was unbelievable, the violence in this fight. It was just fantastic. Let's see. So what made it even better, even though there was no knockouts, is in round 5, Neri's right eye started to swell to a grotesque level. I mean, to a contusion level of Hasim Rahman on the forehead, or Ebony Bridges from the UK and Australia. She's from Australia, but from the UK fight, where he looked like he had in between a baseball and a softball growing on his right eye by about the 6th or 7th round. And I have the link in here for the highlights to the fight if you'd like to see it. I also have the link to the full fight. But you can see in either of those videos just how grotesque Neri's eye was. To start the 7th, remember this is only an 8-round fight, Araujo is hurt, kind of staggered, causes him to move around the ring a lot more and use his jab, really for the first time in the fight. But by the last 45 seconds of the round, we're kind of back to normal. And that was one of the best exchanges of the fight along the ropes at the end of the 7th. Both guys, with Araujo just laying his back against the ropes, completely standing up and letting their hands go. The 8th round went on the same way. And as the bell rings to end the 8th round, the commentator can be heard calling it in Spanish, just a fantastic display of brutality. And it was a perfect way to describe how it went. Now, sadly, the fight ended in a majority draw. The ESPN knockout announcer had it 76-76, and it looked like he had it dead on because the judges had it the same, 76-76 times 2, and then Araujo won one of the cards 76-75. Hopefully, we'll get to see this fight again, but it was fantastic. The best fight I've seen, I think, here in a couple of months for sure, and it'll be on my list for dramatic club fights of the year at the end of the year. There's no doubt about that.
Until Robert Bricks fights again.
Well, that's true too. One round of hell, Robert Bricks. So I've got another one. Can we mention it?
Which one is that?
Manuel Gallegos and Kevin Newman.
Kevin Newman. He's like he's got like a high level of mentions on this podcast.
Yeah, especially the last 2 weeks. Jens Plana defeated him. This was first Newman on Showbox, and this was Newman's first fight since that fight. Now, what I found really odd, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but this fight, we previewed it on the show because on paper it looked like a great fight. It was Thursday night, the main event from Sinaloa, Mexico on UFC Fight Pass. Manuel Gallegos, 17-1, 15 knockouts, big, hard hitter. He took a unanimous decision 10 over Kevin Newman, who falls to 11-2-1, 2 straight losses. Now, like I said, this was Thursday night. What I found odd about it was the same night as Clarissa Shields' MMA debut. And what was odd to me is I just found it interesting that it's such a good boxing match on paper, but the entire boxing media was watching the Clarissa Shields MMA event. What I found odd about that is not that fact, but that the entire boxing media wouldn't be watching Clarissa Shields in a boxing match. So
Oh,
they wouldn't, and they don't, right? I mean, I think
yeah.
it's pretty fair to say. I'm not knocking on Clarissa Shields. She's quite, I don't want to say clearly. I don't want to get into a debate about it, but seems pretty clear. She's at least one or two of the most skilled female boxers that we've ever seen. But boxing media doesn't really cover her events. So I just found it odd. Anyway,
Tim is auditioning to be on my podcast.
it's just weird to me because this fight was really, really good. And Gallegos, I didn't know what to expect from him. I only seen two of his fights, so I didn't know how he was going to match up with Kevin Newman, who's kind of a slick boxer. He might not be able to do that slick boxing thing at a really high level, but for the level that he fights at, he does that and has a lot of skill at that level and does it pretty darn well. Gallegos, 23 years old, looked huge as a super middleweight. I mean, he looked like in the ring. I didn't look terribly hard, but I couldn't see his height. He had to be 6'1"-ish, 6'1", and gosh, he looked like he was at least 180 pounds in the ring. I mean, he was just enormous. He just kept plodding forward, kept coming. And the first couple, 2, 3, 4 rounds of this 10-round fight, Newman was doing exactly what you think. I mean, he was sticking and moving, really keeping a nice pace, staying out of danger, but he just could not stop Gallegos from coming forward. And Gallegos was hurt, like in the first, 60 seconds of the fight, 90 seconds of the fight, where I was like, gosh, I don't think he's going to be able to just continue to eat these shots that he doesn't see coming from Newman, even if Newman isn't necessarily a big puncher. But he did, man, and he just kept going. A couple of odd things happened, and it's Sinaloa, and Gallegos is obviously from Mexico, but Newman got deducted a point in the 6th for hitting behind the head, and no warning or anything. The point just came out. And then another one in the 8th, same situation, no warning, for holding the top rope while he was punching, which is sometimes you see, but rarely see point taken away from it. More or less just a bunch of warnings, although it's happened. Roy Jones is the promoter of the show and also Newman's trainer, which I thought would lend to Newman taking a decision. But Roy, to his credit, regardless of what you think of him as a trainer, 7th round on, he's flat out telling Newman, listen, man, you got to knock him out. You're behind. You got to knock him out, and we're in Mexico. And he just flat out told him. And he was right, because although the right man won the fight, Gallegos took the unanimous decision, 96-94, 96-92, and then a really wide 97-91. And with those 3 scores, the 2 points wouldn't have mattered. It would have still been a victory for Gallegos, although it would have been a split. No, majority win. The right guy won the fight. It just didn't feel right the way it all played out with the points being taken away and then Gallegos being the winner. But it wasn't a robbery. Gallegos deserved the win, and it was a hell of a fight. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I watched it. It was solid.
Unfortunate for Newman that he loses again. He was a guy, at least to me, that seemed like he had a little bit of skills, that there was something there to work with. But yeah, that's unfortunate. I guess I don't know how I feel about UFC Fight Pass in general. I feel like of all the streaming services out there, what are they doing?
Yeah, I know. I don't know. They've had DeBella, as a regular on there. Roy Jones Jr. as a regular on there. I don't really understand it either. I don't know if it was. It sure seems like it was a stake in the ground, years ago, for Dana's dipping his foot into boxing, but now that looks like it's just never going to happen. So I don't know what's happening with that anymore.
All right, what else do you got for us?
So really, really 2 quick things before we move on to the next segment. Listeners of our show will remember back in episode 4, we mentioned a fighter to keep an eye on, 22-year-old featherweight prospect Rasheem Brown from Philadelphia. And Rasheem traveled down to Sonora, Mexico on Saturday, and had to really dig deep into the woods to find this one. Not only that he was fighting, but then the video of it. But it was out there. And then actually he put it up on his Instagram as the weekend was coming to a close. So you can see it either in the show notes or on Rasheem's Instagram, either way. But he had a stay busy KO2 down in Mexico. I really, really, really like this kid. I'm going to continue to watch his Instagram closely and make sure I know when he's fighting. He's someone to keep an eye on. And then I was really entertained on Friday on the Fight Zone UK show that we've mentioned here in previous episodes. There was an extremely rough, just really, really brutal, again, main event in the little weights. This was a flyweight main event in Sheffield, UK, between Matt Windle, 6-3-1, and someone named Neil McCubbin, who I wasn't familiar with, falls to 5-1, as Windle takes a unanimous decision 12 victory, 114, 113, 116, 111, and 117, 110. Windle almost folded McCubbin in half from a left hook to the liver in the fourth, and McCubbin was in serious pain. And shout out to that guy. He got up and he fought his ass off for the last 8 rounds. I mean, this fight was bloody as hell. It was just a really, really good fight with the little guys. That both guys really had some power, hurting each other. Really, really good fight. So that was fun. So it was a huge weekend. Those were the highlights. We've got some lowlights, some other cool stuff too.
I know we haven't been doing lowlights lately, and sometimes there isn't any. But I actually peg this as lowlights for another reason that you have here, and I don't know that we should get into my reasons, but what do you have?
Okay, yeah. Well, let me give you 3 or 4. Well, first of all, this fight was not on BoxRec, and I don't know how to say this man's first name, but it's Showjahan.
That sounded good. Showjahan, I think is how you say it.
Showjahan Ergashev, 20-0, 18 knockouts in Uzbek. Pretty well and pretty highly regarded. I think most people listening to our show will have heard of him. Fighting against someone from Tanzania named Salamu Jengo. And I like to think myself as a very big Tanzanian boxing fan. I have not heard of Mr. Jengo before. But Ergashev takes a TKO 1 win. I've got a pretty extensive, probably 6 minutes worth of highlights in the show notes for my Twitter for you to watch, because this might be one of the worst first round stoppages that you'll ever see. It was just awful. And Ergashev, I mean, when the thing is though, when the bell rang to start this fight, I had a friend of mine on Discord message and say, it doesn't look like Django's ever had boxing gloves on. And, and his record's 16-4. So he was essentially just running around the ring, trying to stay away from Ergashev. And with about 30 seconds left in the round, Ergashev catches him with a pretty good lead left. But at the same time, Django's moving laterally along the ropes, kind of like crisscrossing his feet, trying to get away. And his feet just get kind of tangled. He doesn't even fall, just kind of staggers into the corner. And the ref immediately jumps in and waves off the fight. And the ref has a look on his face, like looking at Django, like, come on, you know this is going to end anyway, right? Like, this is over. And my friend who goes by King Dinesh on Twitter messaged me immediately when it happened, and he said, this is great. Asian referees in general just can't be bothered with mismatches. They just have no issue when they recognize a mismatch in the ring, just stopping it, and they don't give a shit. And that's exactly what happened here. It's funny too. Another reason why I want to mention it is because we talked, I want to say in episode 2 or 3 of our podcast, about a fight in Mexico that a similar circumstance happened. The fight was waved off, but then they restarted it. And on this one in Uzbekistan, I thought the same thing was going to happen. I thought we were going to have a rematch right on the same night, because Django is forcibly complaining to the referee refuses to get walked back to his corner. Now, that's probably not that surprising, right? What was surprising is Ergashev, who had the TKO one, was equally as upset. He's standing like in the middle of the ring showing a fighting stance, like, I'm ready to go. Let's keep going. And he's waving Django on like you would do when someone cracks you with a left and it hurts and you want war and you're like, yeah, come on, let's go. He's doing that. The ref is, I don't know what the ref is doing. And then both fighters start leaning over the ropes at separate times, pleading with who I can only assume is the boxing commissioner for Uzbekistan, because he's sitting in a very nice chair that looks like it's made for royalty. And then all the dignitaries outside the ring start arguing with each other. They start arguing with the ref. This continues on for 10 minutes. And it looks in various 2-minute increments throughout this time that this fight's going to start up again. I was certain this fight was going to start again, but it didn't. The fans start getting restless, throwing trash into the ring. It starts getting ugly. And then they announce Ergashev as the winner, TKO 1, and everybody just bolts and end of broadcast. It was spectacular. What was your reason for this abomination?
Oh, I mean, if you followed Ergashev, or at least boxing media news, you kind of would know that Ergashev is in the middle of a lawsuit where he basically kind of signed with somebody else despite having a promoter already, and he's in this like legal back and forth with them at the moment. Now, I'm curious if this fight was at the Asheville Coliseum or the Asheville Civic Center in North Carolina, because when you said that fans were throwing trash in the ring, I was like, this has to be a WCW crowd.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was an undisclosed location in Uzbekistan. Actually, I didn't dig that deep to find out what the location was.
That's all right. Probably BoxRec doesn't even have it.
Yeah. It was an amazing scene. It got some of the most traffic going for the weekend overall on my Twitter page, that's for sure.
Okay. Now, Ergashev's a guy that should not be mentioned on this podcast, by the way. This is a guy who, like, have already fought on Showbox. You should be getting TV spots. The fact that he isn't, I mean, that says something else. But who is in that level below Ergashev where maybe it's their time?
Yeah, we've got a nice little graduation time discussion here for a couple of minutes. Now, I don't know if it's this fighter's time yet or not, but he's definitely someone to watch for a variety of different reasons. And some of them are kind of funny, and some of them are, does he have talent to go to the next level? And it's a Ukrainian heavyweight. There was a massive Ukrainian card on Saturday, mostly streamed in its entirety on YouTube. And I say massive because there were, I want to say, 6 heavyweight fights on the undercard. And I love to watch Ukrainian heavyweight mismatches. And this Ukrainian heavyweight participated in one of those. His name is Igor, and his nickname is Hulk, like the Incredible Hulk. Shevaduskia. He is now 8-0 with 8 knockouts. I've got the highlight to his fight in the show notes for you, as well as his box rec. He's 6'3". Like I said, he's only had 8 fights. He's weighed between 300 pounds at his debut and after his debut, a few fights after, all the way down to 251 for this bout. I really would love to take a tape measure to him and see if he's really 6'3", because what you see in your eyes with in the ring, he looks like he's about 5'11", and he almost looks 5'11" going east-west too. I mean, this guy's built like a brick shithouse. And he hasn't really fought anyone to this point. His opponent here in this fight, which he won with a TKO stoppage in the second round, was a last-second replacement. And they went through 2 or 3 fighters to get to this guy who took it at the last minute, is what I read on some Ukrainian sports sites as I was preparing for the show. After his 4th fight, he said he was ready for Wilder, Joshua, or Fury, whichever champion was ready to fight him, which I thought was awesome. And also, I'm going to root for any Ukrainian heavyweight that's big and thick like this and actually looks like the Hulk, who comes into the ring wearing cowboy boots, a cowboy hat, and country music playing, which he does. Didn't on this particular fight, but that's a regularity for him. So he's just intriguing overall. He mentioned in an online article after the fight that he's going to take 2 weeks off, but then it's right back to the gym. Him and his promoter have a plan to step him up to a significantly better level of competition for his next fight. Next fight, which he hopes to be in September. And I will be there for that because Igor is one of my favorite Ukrainian heavyweights, and I've seen the majority of his fights now, and someone to keep an eye on. We'll see what kind of future he has.
I do want to point out that, Igor may not have a future as a top-tier heavyweight, okay? I think his future lays more on being like the next legend of the Tim Boxeo universe. Because thus far, at 31 years old, a guy who claims he's ready for the Deontay Wilders and Tyson Furies of the world, he's only fought one fighter that has more wins than losses.
He is a World Series of Boxing veteran.
Notice that you stopped at just saying that he was a veteran of it, meaning that he was a participant, which is like,
He was.
That's like the ultimate moral victory pat on the back is like, well, you participated.
Oh man, I can't. I can't. Hey, he fought Victor Vickhurst.
I don't know who that is.
Victor Faust, big Ukrainian heavyweight. Next big thing. Okay.
He had a 3-2 record in the World Series of Boxing, which isn't terrible. I've seen worse. Anyway, down to I think everyone knows. If I ask you this question, I think just about everybody can name one person this weekend. When I ask the question, are they seriously still fighting?
I know, and it's kind of like it's going to be the master of the obvious here to start, right? Because the first bullet I have written down to share, and this will surprise no one, that it's a very long list on Saturday's pay-per-view from Los Mochis, Sinaloa, Mexico. And not just because Chavez Sr. and Hector Camacho Jr. are doing a exhibition fight, but Anderson Silva and Chavez Jr. are fighting. I think most people probably know that. A little bit under the radar, Omar Chavez, who feels like he's been fighting forever as well. He's fighting Canelo's brother, speaking of people who have been fighting forever, Ramon Alvarez. So there's quite a list on that show, just in and of itself. And then I think most everybody else is familiar, too, on the big stage worldwide. Well, depending on how you define big stage. Felix Sturm comes back in Germany. And New York City's Yuri Foreman. Back in Georgia.
How many knee replacements has he had since we last saw him?
Yeah, since Arthur McCanty Sr., because we had a UK situation.
Wait, no, wasn't it Junior?
Was it Junior?
I think it was
Arthur
Junior.
McCanty Jr.
Because he cussed him out.
Yeah, because we had a situation this weekend, right, on a main fight where the referee threw the towel out of the ring.
Oh, in the UK, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not accepting the towel. Fight on.
I remember that's what you're supposed to do according to the rules in the UK. Just saying.
Okay, yeah, fair play. I just remember Yuri Foreman had blown out his knee. Was it against Cotto?
Yeah, it was Cotto.
Might have been against Cotto. Yeah. Blown out his knee, and the towel came in, and Mercanti threw it out and said, no, you don't want to go out like that, kid. I'm like, well, you'd probably like to go out alive, considering he can't move anymore with a blown out knee. But anyway.
And he wasn't doing hot in the fight anyway.
No. Yeah, Yuri Foreman. He just fought here about 2-3 months ago. Maybe my timeline's blurred, but he was supposed to fight again about a month ago, and the fight got scratched at the last minute. So this is going again for that fight. And then,
Atlanta is going to be real busy. I mean, they got the Yuri Foreman fight this weekend, Gervonta Davis next weekend. I mean, things are really turning around for Atlanta. Yeah,
Atlanta, big fight town. We had Roberto White we talked about last week.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Yeah. Well, that's some of the older folks fighting, but we should probably talk about just kind of what's coming up next in general.
Yeah, what do we have for this weekend, apart from 40 fights across 3 big networks?
Oh, I know. And you know what's wild about it is I was combing through BoxRec very, very closely multiple times here in the last couple of days, trying to find any of the hidden gems on the club level that we might be missing. And it's so strange. I mean, overall, across the whole world, it's a huge weekend, right? I mean, mostly on the higher level, there's a ton of club level boxing going, but really not a lot to mention, that's really catching your eye. But there are 2 or 3 that have really got me pretty excited. The first one, and I hope this isn't difficult to watch, South Africa has been really hit or miss. South Africa can mainly be seen on IPTV services. Very, very difficult to stream live on big shows like this. But there is a 7.5-hour extravaganza in South Africa on Saturday. The show is actually broken up on BoxRec into 2 different events. One will start out basically like the prelims or undercard, and then they have the main card, which is going to follow immediately after the undercard on a different BoxRec event, a full different, completely different event in and of itself, but they'll go right back to back. There's no, the broadcast time is a continually running program. So there's going to be from 8 a.m. Eastern time, Saturday morning in the U.S., all the way through 3:30 in the afternoon. It should be really fantastic. The 2 main fights on the card are really, really good. Ludoma Lamati, who's 17-0-1. He'll be fighting for the vacant IBO junior featherweight world title against a Mexican named Jose Martin Estrada Garcia, 12-1-1. And really the story for the main event here is that Ludoma Lamati is almost gift wrapped an opportunity to become an IBO junior featherweight world champion. He's been kind of hindered. He's 29 years old through lack of activity in his career. A couple of fights here, then it'd be a year off, a fight or 2, then a year off. And I think the promoter's really hoping here to be able to hand him an IBO world title and jumpstart his career again. His nickname's 9mm, which I love about Lamati. But really what's most exciting, and I tweeted about this back in April when this fight got announced, is we have what is the equivalent of the South Africa Spence versus Crawford welterweight super fight happening, as Jabulani McKenzie, who's 12-0, is fighting Tulani Mbenge, who's 17-1. And this is really a domestic level fight that the South Africans are very, very excited about. McKenzie is really a slick boxer puncher, but some articles I've been reading leading up to this weekend have felt like in his last fight, he kind of stubbed his toe, so to speak. Didn't look really good, even though he got the victory. And then 2 fights prior, a majority decision, 12-round regional level title bout that he won in December of 2019. So it's a situation where, yes, he's 12-0, still a young fighter, but potentially hasn't even reached, his level in the ring on how he can perform. And they're hoping this match with Mbenge will bring that out of McKenzie. And we talked about this a couple episodes ago. McKenzie has been fighting 10 and 12-round bouts, and he's 12-0 since his 5th fight, which I always I find crazy with not being that out of the ordinary in South Africa. It's interesting to me. So even though he's a young fighter with only 12 fights, he does have that level of experience. Well, Mbenge is a power puncher, so we've got the contrasting styles going. And his only loss 2 fights ago was a contested decision to Sebastian Formella from Germany, who most people remember has fought Sean Porter on a recent bubble event for the PBC here recently. It was a really, really good fight. I thought Mbenge edged it, but he also has a really solid amateur pedigree. So two young, hungry lions going after it in the co-feature on this one, and the country of South Africa is really, really excited about it. So I just hope I can watch it. It's been really hit or miss with South Africa. So if you want to message me, I'll do the best I can to help you, but this will be one where we'll all be scratching for ways to view it.
Mbenge is one of two people over the long and illustrious career of Miguel Vasquez that was able to stop him. And Vasquez has been in there with like everyone from Timothy Bradley to Canelo to Josh Taylor and everyone in between. He'd been in there with Cosme Rivera. I think we've talked about that a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
And Mbenge is one of two guys that were able to stop Miguel Vasquez. And just for the record, those two guys are Mbenge and Josh Taylor. Granted, an older, worn version of Miguel Vasquez, but man, I've been aware of Mbenge for a while because he's always sat pretty. I don't want to say high, but he's sat on the first page of the BoxRec welterweight rankings. And so, like, that's a name that always comes up as like, well, when is this guy surely could work himself into position to be a mandatory for a title? Hasn't quite worked out. Maybe if he would have beat Sebastian Formella, he would have been in position to challenge for a title, I imagine. I think Formella was like really close to being a mandatory, but that didn't quite work out.
Well, in that loss, you know, if you thought Formella moved around the ring a lot against Porter, it was nothing compared to the fight against Mbenge. So it was a really good fight, but it was just an awful style for Mbenge, and Formella just ran around the ring for 12 rounds. I can't believe he kept the pace up and just was pot-shotting, and I thought Mbenge won the fight, but, you know.
I'm not a fan at all of Sebastian Formella. He is, while I really I admire the toughness that the guy has, he fights in a style that I really just don't care to watch.
No, I'm with you there. I'm not interested in that. One might say the Sonny Edwards style.
Well, for one, I think very few people know who Sonny Edwards is. So, like, I mean, is it the Sonny Edwards style? I don't know.
Fair play.
What else we got?
So we have two more things to mention. Like I said, the schedule's a little interesting this weekend. But on Monday, I just wanted to mention this because, of course, we're recording this on a Tuesday evening. Next Monday, we have live boxing from the legendary Kurokian Hall in Tokyo, Japan, which is a rarity. I mean, it's difficult to see live boxing from Japan. We've had a ton more on YouTube here since post-pandemic, but that's been mostly really low-level stuff. And I don't want to take a deep dive into this show itself, but I just want to mention it's on a monthly sub-site that costs $9.99 a month called Boxing Rays. And Boxing Rays, I think I've mentioned on previous shows, is one of the best investments I've made as a boxing fan because of the content that's exclusive to them. And they'll be doing a live broadcast that'll start at 4:30 in the morning U.S. Eastern time on Monday. Unfortunately, Boxing Rays did just switch over to a geographical lock here within the last month. So you do need a Japanese VPN in order to see it now, which is kind of a bummer. It's never been that way. But
that's really not fair.
Well, I don't understand. I don't know. I got to get with my man, Asian Boxing Scott, and see if he's got any insight on that.
They're really holding out for some like rights deal in the U.S.
Got to be
for Japanese club boxing. Like, I'm not going to voice my frustrations, but we could have a conversation about that some other day. What else do we have?
One more thing. Short, sweet, and to the point. It is, in fact, Saul Farah fight week, as you mentioned. I wasn't going to let this segment end without mentioning Saul Farah. I tweeted out on Monday pictures of the King traveling in an airplane to Pedro Tavares' hometown. A fight that's been postponed, canceled, or rescheduled 3 times now. We have an epic event on Saturday, which is a huge day for boxing around the world. And only the king can sit on top of his throne on a day like that. So for the Bridgerweight title of Bolivia against Pedro Tavares.
That is, well, we'll see if we can get there. I mean, Saul is probably very upset about the frequent cancellations, and I wouldn't be shocked if he just went direct to Pedro's house and said, let's settle it.
To make it even better, I can almost guarantee we'll be watching this fight, or I'll be watching this fight, on a Facebook stream from a vertical cell phone held in Faraz's corner by one of his
trainer
people. Yeah. So,
although I imagine if I'm like really putting together the picture of Saul Farah, he trains himself.
I think that's true. Yes.
They just hold a mirror in the corner between rounds, and he has to like just stare at himself and think, "What do I need to do here?"
Hey, I'll say it again. I'm not in spectacular shape myself. I'm in better shape, at least on the eye test, than Saul Farah. However, I definitely could not go 12 rounds in a boxing match, even if I was doing 10 punches a round. So our man Saul's doing something right.
Well, throwing 10 punches around sounds like something Shakur Stevenson would do, but I guess Saul does it too.
Oh, all right.
Don't tell me you didn't watch that fight.
I watched like 2 rounds of it, and that was about all I could stomach.
Exactly. All right, after some brief technical issues, we have Alejandra Ayala. Let me know if I have anything incorrect here, but you are the commissioner of Tijuana Boxing, and you are infamous on this podcast. We bring you up, I think, just about every weekend due to the fact that Big Punch tends to be perhaps one of, if not the busiest venues for boxing in the world.
Yes, I agree. Both of those are correct.
Does that mean you have a lot of work since you're the commissioner? Like, what is your day-to-day like?
Well, it's not so much a day-to-day as far as a weekend to weekend, but usually we have at least 2 events on the weekend, usually a Friday and Saturday event. Sometimes we have 2 events on Saturdays, and when it really gets going, we have events Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the weekends get a little bit crazy because, for example, Thursday we have the event, but in the morning we have the weigh-in for the Friday event. So in the morning we'll have the weigh-in, in the afternoon we'll have the event, and that'll be, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. So it gets a little bit crazy, but you know what? I think it's become customary for the commission and everybody involved. So it kind of just flows, to be honest. It seems a little bit overwhelming, especially for people who are not accustomed to it, but I think we got it down to a science.
So in the past, I've learned from Tim, okay, that Big Punch was kind of, and there are others like it, but Big Punch was more like the face of things. It was kind of the Wild West. And there were things happening there that probably should not have been happening. Things that maybe weren't so safe, maybe things that weren't that smart. So can you give us some background of like, well, this is, when I came into things, this is what it was like, and this is what I'm trying to do now?
So basically, the thing is, maybe Big Punch gets a bad rep, but it's not so much the venue. The venue, we have to just kind of be aware that it is just a place of spectacles. And it's not just boxing. They have lucha libre. They have other events that really don't even have to do with sports. That's just a venue for sports. And then the promoters are really the ones doing everything for boxing. And here in Tijuana, we have anywhere between 20 and 30 active promoters a year. Why do I say that? Well, some come and some go. But more or less, we have that many. So I don't know that it is the venue. I think it's more the promoters doing so, and I'm not here to excuse them. I think it's a very complicated thing. I think it's easy to blame somebody or try to blame somebody for maybe injustices done, or for maybe fights that we see are not fair in the sense of records maybe. I know in the past we've been criticized for that, for especially Americans coming here and trying to build up the record and all of that. So, I mean, that's been going on since forever, since I was a fighter, since I first came to Tijuana 7-8 years ago. And now that we're here, I mean, the only thing we can do on each commissioner, the only thing we can do is try to make things a little bit better for everybody, right? So I've been in the position of a promoter, I've been in the position of a boxer, I've been in a position of a manager, and it's not easy to be in any of those positions, right? So as commissioner, it's very easy to say, you know what, from now on, a 1-0 has to fight with the 1-0, but you don't really know the circumstances behind. You don't know what the fighters are going through. You don't know what the promoters are going through. It's a lot of other things involved that we maybe as the public we don't really see, right? So what have we done here? We've been doing this for the last year, for example. Fights that are more equal. We have constant communication with Marina from BoxRec. We have a constant communication. Actually, today, after this meeting, every Tuesday, we have meetings with the commission, and all the promoters or anybody who has any questions or any inconformities with boxing, either past or present, can come and talk to us with the president, the vice president, the commissioner, the doctor. And I think having that open communication has allowed us for the betterment of boxing. And a lot of American boxers have come here recently in the past couple of months since we've opened back up after the pandemic, and have come and lost. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think somewhere along the criticism, I think that was one of the biggest criticism. It's not so easy to just come to Tijuana and win, for example.
Alejandra, I saw one of the fighters that I saw that rings a bell after I hear you say that was Lolo Harris. I think Lolo was 17 years old, fighting out of or fighting with some of the Jackrabbit boxing kids like Ashton Silva and some of those groups, and he got matched pretty tough against a guy that was 2-5 or so, that really just kind of brought him hell for about 3 rounds and ended up knocking him out. So to your point, I think I mean, it's not necessarily a given win. I guess, the other thing, Alejandra, that we've talked about on the podcast a lot in terms of club boxing, because that's really what I spend most of my time watching, and Tijuana and Big Punch outside the United States, well, let me say a different way. Tijuana and Big Punch are my favorite things to watch for club boxing, and then the United States follows after that. But the boxing world that just focuses on like the high level shows, right? That these promoters have the ability to fly in opponents from all around the world or any part of the world. I mean, it's just a different situation setting up club boxing events, and it's easy to look on paper and say, well, this fight shouldn't be approved. But like, as you mentioned, you're mostly geographical locked with club boxing shows, and that's just not Tijuana. That's everywhere in the United States, where you're pulling from a small pool. Promoters necessarily don't have a lot of money to bring opponents in. And there's all kinds of different factors that aren't considered, that people don't understand when they're not as involved in the club boxing level as they are in the national level.
Yeah, exactly. I think you make a very good point. And for example, I think it's in the commission, most of us, for example, the doctor has been involved in boxing and MMA for 20, 30 years, so he knows a lot what's going on. I know a lot of what's going on. So sometimes you say, mentioning that particular fight, how can a 10-0 fight against, for example, a 3-7, and then you get the surprise and they're like, wait a minute, well, it's my job to kind of know all these rivals, right? To know their capacity and know who they're fighting against, and say, okay, maybe on paper it doesn't look like an exactly clear-cut equal fight, but I know the power or the striking or the abilities of each fighter that I could say, okay, well, it's going to be a good fight. So I think it's our responsibility to know those sort of things. And also something interesting, I think here in Tijuana specifically, I feel like the most active boxing wise. I don't know if in the world, but it seems like that to me. Even on a national level, we know that Mexico City also has great, amazing fighters. Why aren't they fighting there? And I have a lot of connections in Mexico City, in the Bajío region, and in the northern region, and they're all begging promoters and us to give them an opportunity to come fight out here. They're like, okay, yeah, we're out here, we're living, we're training, but I know there's a lot of fights going out there. Give me a chance to fight. I think as all boxers, we just want the opportunity to fight. So I think I'm very proud of that too, that we're able to, like you say, before they get to the 12-round fights, they have to start somewhere. They have to fight 4, 6, 8-round fights. They have to get these little titles in order to build up, right? And I think a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of maybe just transitory people who are fans of boxing don't really understand all those other factors. And I think Tijuana is doing a great job in doing that. I mean, we've had great fighters come through here: Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, just to name. I feel really proud of that.
Becoming a commission official is, from a fighter, which you were, is not something that we hear every day. So I'm just curious, like, what about your past? What about your upbringing? What was the connection that got made between you as a professional to you as somebody who really is like the overseer and the nurturer of the entire boxing community of Tijuana?
Boxing is my life. When people ask me, what do you do? And it's funny because when I was an active fighter, they would say, oh, you're a boxer? Yes. Oh, so you don't do anything? I was like, wait, what? No, I spend all my day training, But apart from that, as I mentioned, I've been in all these other realms, in matchmaking, in managing, in training, in promoting. So I know all of the boxing community, past and present. So I think just literally them seeing me everywhere and them seeing me in all these events and them seeing me with all these boxers just kind of gave them the confidence that I had the ability to do something here in boxing. Not only because I do know a big percentage of, if not everybody here in boxing, and nationwide. So I think that gave them the confidence that I was able to do this job. And right here in Mexico, something I'm also very proud of is they're pushing a lot of the equality, the gender equality. So the mayor here in Mexico was a woman. Actually, we just had elections and we elected another woman. So I'm the first woman commissioner in Tijuana, in the history of Tijuana, and I feel really proud about that. And I think that we can segue that into the future. Maybe right now they're saying, it's the first female commissioner in Tijuana, and she did a great job for being a woman. And eventually, we won't hear that. It'll just be like, oh, she did a great job as commissioner. It's not just because she's a woman or she's in this title, this position. But I think somewhere along the lines, it started off like that. And now that I'm actually in this, and I feel like I'm doing a good job, my whole team is doing a great job. I think that maybe the dialogue will change a little bit.
I think that.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, just let me ask you a quick question about what you just mentioned. It's interesting to me as someone, and I don't know if I should be proud of this or embarrassed of this, but I feel like I watch more club boxing than most anyone around the world. And what I always see in everywhere except Tijuana is such a predominant level of female boxing, but there's not much female boxing in Tijuana. Why do you think that is?
I actually feel the opposite.
Do you? Okay.
So, because, well, as far as Mexico, but even when, I was training out in the States in Chicago 2 years ago, and I was actually surprised that there were, out of maybe 10 cards, even undercards, like there was maybe one female fight. And here in Mexico, like when I started, coming into this boxing scene 10 years ago, it was very common for a female fight to be the protagonist on a TV, on a national level, on the, Sanfit, for example. And then when I started boxing, I was actually started in Mexico City. And so I had a short amateur career because, I felt like time was pressing on. And so I decided to debut. And I got my license in January, and I did not fight until June. And I had to come down and wait. I had to make negotiations. It was my debut. I was fighting against somebody already experienced. It was very difficult. And so when I came to Tijuana for my second fight in December, I literally came to fight and I never left, because this city has so much support for boxing in general, but for female boxing. As you mentioned, there are so many great female boxers out here fighting out of Tijuana. We have a couple champions. We have Kenya Enriquez. We have, of course, Jackie Nava. We have Brenda Flores. We have Sandra Robles. We have, and like that, I can name a bunch. Olympic, actually this year, there's 3 Olympic fighters who are going to debut. Montserrat just debuted last month. She did a great job against a tough opponent. And it's actually very common to have female undercards here in Tijuana. Up to 3 female fights in one card I've been a witness to. So I feel like as far as female fighting, at least in Mexico and arguably the world, there's a lot of female fighting.
Damn, I need to step my game up.
Well, with that said, with that said, on the podcast, we almost exclusively talk about Big Punch. But are there any other places, and I know Big Punch is just a venue, but are there any other places that are under, your or within your reach that we should be paying attention to?
I think
Cheers Bar,
a big
maybe? Reason.
Here's the thing. I think it was very different before the pandemic.
Right.
There were a few venues, even downtown, where there was a lot of transited. There was a lot of boxing, like a club boxing. There was, for example, Rancho Grande, Escape, Cheers. We've had some in Independencia. That was another big one. There was about 5-6 venues that were constant. What happened with the pandemic is obviously all the bars, all the clubs had to close down, and so there weren't any more. Those weren't available anymore. And Big Punch just sort of thrived because you didn't have to worry about all the things, because it was already set. For example, the government went, they said, you know what, these are the requirements to do an event during the pandemic. And Big Punch was like, okay, let's check all of these and let's go from there. So as a promoter, they just came in and it was like, okay, everything's already arranged. Yeah, I'm going to pay. It doesn't matter, but I don't have to worry about anything because they already know what the government is asking of them. So I think that's really what happened. And that's why Big Punch right now is basically the only venue. Right now we are in green, so we see some promoters trying to go to different venues and seeing what it's going to be like. But I think at least from here up until the end of the year, Big Punch is going to be the main name in boxing, club boxing here in Tijuana.
Oh, Tim just deleted the questions. I want to, something I joke about a lot on the podcast, and maybe I'm a little mean about it, but I often joke, and you could blame Tim, okay? But I say that when you go to Big Punch, like when you wait in line to check in, but apparently there's no line though, according to Beto Duran, you could just walk in. Like they ask you if you want to fight, and then if you say yes, they give you a pair of gloves. So... But the question, though, is like, well, what is the process to fight? Like, let's just say that I had some beef with someone on Twitter, and I wanted to fight him. So if I said, like, well, let's just go down to Big Punch and I'll knock you out, what is the actual process, though, for me to get in the ring?
So as far as these exhibition fights that are happening,
Oh no,
Tik
this is real
Tokers
though.
versus YouTubers, oh no, but I'm saying, uh, we're not authorizing those type of fights. We're not even really authorizing exhibition fights. What we are doing is we're doing things literally by the book. So we have rules and regulations of the commission, and so for example, if you are a debut, you have to go through the correct protocols. If you're debuting from Tijuana, you need a letter of debut saying there are two main amateur, I don't know how to call them, associations here in Tijuana, and you have to have fought in either one of them. And then the president of each association has to know you and has to verify, okay, this fighter did 20 amateur fights, of which he won 15 and lost 5, and I declare him, able to debut. So that's the first thing we need. We need a card of debut. If you're coming from out of state, then your commission from wherever you are has to give you an authorization to fight out here in Tijuana. And with that, I mean, we can't dig into the past of every boxer all over the world, correct? So we just have to confide that the commission, wherever you got your license from, is authorizing you in whatever level that it is. So if California wants to send you, authorize you a license and say you're apt to fight in Tijuana, then we just have to trust California that you're able to fight here in Tijuana. And then the next step is obviously looking for a fight that's equal in whatever sense. So sometimes you do get these boxers that come out here that have a big trajectory. You can even debut at 6 rounds if you've competed on an international level or an Olympic level. That's not uncommon for them to debut. And then you just have to look at the rival that's adequate for whatever the debut that you're going to do. If most of the times, if you're just a debut and it's your first time and this and that, well, then you're going to go against a 1-0 or a 0-1 or a 1-3 or whatever it is that your record. That matchmaking is done through the promoter. But once the promoter has everything, then they come to us. They say, okay, this is the fighter, this is their box rec, this is their record, and this is the rival. And then we say, okay, we authorize that fight, we don't authorize that fight, or things of that matter. But I mean, we don't actually do that. The promoter does it, and then we just authorize or not.
So basically, me as somebody who's never fought before and no amateur background, and you're not counting street fights, I can't just go to...
You haven't had any street fights.
I've had 40 actually, but
all right, like the TikToker.
Exactly. But if I go down and I just like show up to wherever your office is and I say like, yeah, how do I need to fight this weekend, I'm trying to get paid, you're rejecting me?
Yes, we do not allow that.
Even though you know me now, even though we're kind of friends, you're still rejecting me?
Well, the other thing that sometimes can be done is a test of skills. So if, for example, I don't know you, I know you now through, but I've never seen your 40 street fights, right? So you would have to come down. I'd have to see your skill set. I have to see you stand up correctly, throw a jab, do a little defense. And then I say, okay, well, yeah, you're apt for it. Or I could just be like, no, definitely not.
Or you're like, you know what? This guy could do with getting knocked out. Yeah. Sign right here, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's not as easy as everyone makes it seem, but...
I can't guarantee that I'm not going to make the jokes anymore, but another question, though, along these lines is, like, in the UK, we see these fighters that are, like, 2 and 403. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, like, what is your take on, like, the career loser, and I say that literally in the description of like, well, they lose a lot.
Yeah.
But like, what's your opinion of that guy who just comes in and is like, yeah, I lose fights? What is it?
So it's interesting. Look, there are some fighters that have a record of, well, here in Tijuana not so much, but even 0-14, 0-20, or 1-2-26, for example. But they're considered journeymen. They have had all these crazy losses. For example, I can name one off the top of my head. His name's Jorge Sigas. So when he started off winning. He had his family. He started fighting out of his weight class or whatever. But even in all of those fights, like his losses are majority decisions, split decisions. And these are against fighters that are 7-0, 9-0, Americans, Europeans. You know what I mean? So when I see that fight on record and it says, Jorge Cias is fighting against 5-0, and you say, for example, I don't remember his record, but it's something like 420 or something, or 425 or something. And I say, well, but he's going to give a good fight. And then there are other fighters that, yes, as you mentioned, they're coming to get their paycheck, unfortunately. So what we have done in this commission is we suspend them indefinitely. So they come in, if they're not suspended already, they come in and they ask for an opportunity. And we give it to them if it's, for example, okay, you're 1-15 and you're fighting 1-0. All right. And we tell them, this is your chance. If you lose, you're getting suspended indefinitely. Or if you don't put up a fight, you're getting suspended indefinitely. And that's just to protect their integrity. What do I think about them? Me personally, not as a commissioner. I think there are many things involved in this beautiful sport. And sometimes it is their job, and sometimes it is their income. And sometimes, we don't really know what's going behind just this fight. It's easy for us to maybe make jokes, or it's easy for us to say, oh, what a loser, but we don't really know what's going on. So I understand that aspect. But me as commissioner, I have to protect the integrity of the boxers. So if I know you're going to get hurt, and if I know you're not putting up a fight and you haven't trained, and, it could be detrimental in the long run for you, then I'm not going to let you fight anymore.
When that happens and like a matchup comes to your desk or whatever, or you've got to approve a matchup, do you, and it's like a gross mismatch, somebody's going to get hurt. Maybe the guy who's like got a 1-3 record and he's fighting like this young little phenom. Do you go to the promoter and scold them? Do you cuss them out? Like, you were a fighter, so do you threaten to say, like, why don't you get in the ring?
Yeah, like I know you've never fought. I know you've never fought. I'm a fighter, and I could knock you out. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I think that, but no, I don't say it. And they know too. That's the funny part. Like, I look at the list, and even just glancing through it, and I look at that one, and I tell them, like, come on, that's not gonna happen. And they just kind of just smile, like, oh, I thought I was gonna let that one slide or whatever, and then they're all right, and I'm like, the rest are okay, but that's not gonna go. Oh, okay. And it's not a big deal, like, that's what I'm saying. They know, especially the promoters have been doing this for so many years. They know, but sometimes they try to just kind of slip one in there.
And it's kind of like you just let them know. You don't ever like scold them, like, this is unacceptable. Don't come to this place again with this type of matchup.
No, I think as I mentioned, honestly, even like here in Tijuana, like boxing, it's like a family, and it's an extended family. And obviously, as in all extended families, there's some people that don't like each other, and there's some people that are gonna fight, and there's some people that are best friends. But at the end of the day, it's your family, So even if there are rivalries, even if there are discrepancies, at the end of the day, we just come to terms because we have to keep working together, because that's how it is, and it's for the betterment of everybody, for everybody to work together. It's in everyone's interest. So those things kind of die down, even if at some point there are some discrepancies.
You sound perfect for the job of commissioner that I understand at least what it's supposed to be. So I'm curious, like, how did you get the opportunity? What was like the steps in which, like, how did you go from fighter to like somebody coming up to you and saying, hey, do you want to do this?
So during the pandemic, I actually had 2 fights fall through. One was the first week of April, when everything shut down here in Tijuana. Literally, I was 3 days away from my fight and everything shut down. And then, everyone's like, oh, it'll be back up in a month. And no, it lasted months, right? So after that, I started running, I started training, and then it opened back up. And then last October, I had a fight. And I said, okay, this is the one. I'm ready. I'm 100%. And a week before my fight, my rival's father passed away to COVID. So she canceled the fight. And then after that, it was just kind of like, okay, well, I need to do other things. So I started doing matchmaking. I started doing managing. But I didn't stop training, but I stopped being just the boxing. So in this year, when they made the decision to integrate women into the boxing commission, as I mentioned, because I know the president, I know the vice president, I know the commissioner, I know everybody already involved, because I've been involved in Tijuana and in boxing for 6 years. So they said, hey, I see that you're not an active fighter anymore. Would you be interested in being a commissioner? We think you're great for the job because of everything that you've gone through, and I think you'd be a great addition. Would you be interested in? And then it was kind of like a tough decision for me. It wasn't a right away thing, because yes, obviously I want to be part of the commission. I want to be able to make a difference, and I want to be able to influence the boxers, the managers, the promoters, and to help them out as they've helped me out in my career. So I saw that as a great opportunity. But then obviously it was like, then I'm forced not to fight. And I think all fighters never want to say they're officially retired, right? That's why we have so many exhibitions right now. So it was a tough decision for me, but I decided, let's turn the page. Let's see where this could lead. And I'm very happy. I'm very happy that they integrated me into it. After that, when I finally gave them my decision, I came into the commission. They made it official. I did the signature, and I've been under the tutelage of the previous commissioner who showed me the ropes, because obviously I know about boxing. I know how everything is, but even just like the paperwork aspect of it, that I obviously didn't know about. So he's been great. His name is Manuel Cardona, and he's been literally by the hand showing me how things are done. And then last month I was finally we did like a co-inspection sort of thing of the events, and slowly but surely he's been letting me do more things, the weigh-ins, with Sanford and the events, and I've been able to do events on my own now. And it's been obviously helpful, because as I mentioned, there are so many events. So sometimes there's 2 events the same day, sometimes they overlap, and we just need to split up. So even in the commission, we have like 20 judges, 5 referees, and we need all of these people to be part of this, so that everything works out.
Alejandra, I got to say now, you're not completely telling the truth. I heard a little political speak there, because what I've seen on Instagram is that you're training again. You even put a teaser out there that said news coming soon. So are we going to have, this has to be, I mean, you're laughing, but it has to be the first time in the history of worldwide boxing that a commissioner of a boxing organization is going to fight. So surely it looks like you're getting ready to fight. Is that what's about to happen?
Well, officially, if I were to fight, I'd have to give up my post as commissioner. So I don't know if that'll be the first time as well that a commissioner gives up her job to go back to boxing. That might be a first. But as I mentioned,
I have an idea.
I love boxing. I love training. I still do it. The first thing I do every single day when I wake up is I go for my morning run. I think that I'm going to do that until, I'm not able to walk anymore. And I'm whatever comes my way, that's what I'm going to do. I'm just getting ready for the opportunity, whichever way it goes, in the commission. If I were to come back to boxing, it would have to be for an important fight. I'm not, as much as I love Big Punch, that's not the fight that I'm looking for at this moment. So if something important were to come my way, then I want to be ready for it. I think I can, well, obviously that's what I was training for prior to this pandemic, prior to this opportunity. But now that I'm here and I am doing this opportunity, and that I am given this opportunity, I'm making the best of it. And I feel as well very happy to be able to put in my little grain of sand in this Tijuana boxing.
What if you came back in an exhibition, so you're technically not a pro, and you fought one of the commissioners from like Rosarito?
Hey, anything is possible. It's 2021, times are weird. COVID times are weird.
This could be a star-studded affair.
Right.
Angelo, considering a couple of your questions, maybe you could go down and make your pro debut. She could knock you out.
No. I have my own enemies, okay? Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Well, Alejandra, I think that is it. We thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with us, sharing something or sharing more, kind of dispelling some of the myths about Big Punch, but also I can't guarantee that we won't keep, or at least I won't keep perpetuating them. Is there anything coming up that maybe we should have our attention on?
Here in Tijuana right now, actually, very weirdly enough, we haven't had events these past couple of weeks. Actually, last week and this week there will not be any events. But then we're gonna start, with everything, and a lot of the promoters are also bringing in belts to Tijuana. Even though they're smaller, but they're bringing in WBC silver belts, WEBA belts, ABO belts, WBO belts. So that's what they've come to tell us, and so we can expect that the rest of the year.
Do you guys have a regional title?
We do have one. It's actually the Tijuana title, which I'm very proudly a champion of in 2017. But those really haven't, we haven't continued to impulse them, I think, unfortunately. And so the next thing would be the national champion, Fecon Box from the WBC, and just the national championship, Mexico national champion, that is also prevalent here. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, those have kind of not died down, but they haven't given them the importance. And so usually they opt for other belts like the ones I've mentioned. For the women, obviously the WEBA is predominant, all over the world, and it's coming out here as well. WBC, OMB, ABO, those are the ones that are most common out here.
One quick alibi is Repo Rick not holding a show this weekend? I thought there was supposed to be one. I thought there was supposed to be one last weekend, but then I thought it was pushed to this weekend because I know Chris Lovejoy has a heavyweight fighter he's looking to debut on a DeAndre Savage on a show here. I thought it was this weekend.
It got postponed because Repo had some health issues. And then once he came back from them, it was just too fast to put on the show. A lot of people think it's easy. It's not that easy. Yeah. Even if you have, 8 fights on the show. But here in Tijuana, it's very common to have 15 fights in the show. So imagine coming up with all those rivals and all of those logistics. And it's not as easy as people think. So my understanding was, Repo contacted me directly, and he said that he was no longer doing that show because it was just, the logistics aspect of it was just too soon for him to do that. So it got postponed until next month. I believe gotcha. July 11th.
Can you give us just like a little bit of like your interactions with Repo Rick and who the guy is?
Yeah, actually I met him in 2015 when I was promoting, and he came up to me. I believe he was still with Mayweather. And he said, I want to put in some of my fighters on your show. And that was back when we were doing Ace Boxing, was the promoter we were doing. I said, yeah, sure. So that's how it started. That's how our relationship started. Then I kind of lost contact with him when I really started fighting and just training and worrying about that aspect. And then recently we kind of reconnected here back in TJ. And he said, oh, you're back promoting? And I said, well, I'm matchmaking. Oh, and we started. And then when I became commissioner, he was like, wow, you're commissioner. He's actually a really great person. I know he gets, I don't know if a bad rep, but he's an interesting man, right? So you either love him or you hate him. But he's actually he's very nice, and he's very every time, he greets me kindly and he treats me fairly and he's always smiling. So it's fine working with him.
Well, we are big fans of Repo Rick here. At least I am. I don't know about Tim. I don't want to speak for you, but Alejandra and myself are big fans of Repo Rick.
He's fun. He comes out with his song every single time. Hey, can I get the microphone? He tells me. Can I come? My fighter's coming out. Can I sing my song? Yeah. Go ahead, Repo. Sing your song. So we let him do his little show.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we wish you all the best of luck as the new commissioner. And if you do indeed host this exhibition and you need 2 guys to be part of your entourage, let us know. We'll be there.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
It's been fun. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So that was our interview with Alejandra. Tim, any final thoughts?
That was fantastic. Thanks for driving there. I really appreciate it. We got some breaking news on Alejandra's, my son's name's Alejandro. Alejandra's professional career, should it restart again, as well as a little Repo Rick snippet. Can't go wrong there. We got some breaking news on what I thought was going to be a whoop that ass card Saturday the 19th.
I like how you always take a breath before you say that.
Yeah, I wonder. That filter comes into my head, wondering if I should say "whoop that ass." But
I always thought that it was because you put like extra emphasis on "whoop."
Yeah, that too. So yeah, that was fantastic. No, it has been quiet at Big Punch. It's some of my favorite weekends are walking Saturday back-to-back shows. So no, man, thanks to everybody who listens and provides feedback. Message me anytime on any platform. Let us know what you'd like to hear. And thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Definitely leave a rating or review if you enjoy this podcast. I mean, man, that was a great interview. I really enjoyed it. Go to Tim Boxeo's Twitter, twitter.com/TimBoxeo. Check the profile. You'll see the links. You'll see links to everything in there, whether it be the Discord, the Tim Boxeo show, podcast link, or the Tim Boxeo shop. All types of things. Get everything Tim Boxeo. Did you ever debut that new t-shirt?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, he's got one under wraps. It's a cool one. Save your money, guys. You're going to be ordering a new t-shirt very, very soon. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening yet again, and we will be back next week.